Monday marks the 33rd anniversary of the Space Shuttle Challenger explosion. But before the disaster, there was one man who tried to stop that mission. The Challenger disaster, written and writer and director Nathan VonMinden, actor and producer Jose Quinones, and actor Eric Hanson joined me this morning before tonight's big premiere. Good morning. So nice to have you here.
Good morning. Thank
wow,
you.
This brought back so many memories watching this, because I remember watching as the shuttle exploded. It was horrific. Can you kind of tell people who may not have watched that or been around at that time what happened?
So in 1986, they were in the shuttle launching program. The Space Shuttle Challenger broke up 73 seconds after launch because of O-ring failure. And what most people don't know is there is a group of engineers that tried to stop the launch the night before. And that's kind of what our story tells about these heroes, these people that inspired us.
And it's so hard to believe that these people really tried to stop the launch from happening and were not able to. There are so many things you could go into here. What's the most important point to you out of the many things in your movie?
You know, watching people in this pressure cooker, time-sensitive thing, because the shuttle was scheduled to launch the day before, and had it launched, everything would have been perfectly fine.
Because the weather wasn't that cold. The cold weather is what did it.
Well, what happened is the door handle got jammed on the shuttle, and they had to go up there and cut it off with a hacksaw. They're working on the most complicated piece of machinery with a hacksaw, and that's what delayed it to the next day, which was the coldest launch in NASA's history. And that's where the engineers' senses went up and said, we have to do something about this. We can't launch in this weather.
And they weren't listened to.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. And so, Jose, the film was originally titled Angry Men, talking about these engineers who had tried to stop the launch. You can understand why it was titled that way. And I'm curious to know, after this was all said and done, these engineers had tried to stop it, they failed, 7 lives were lost. What happened to those engineers?
Well, I mean, they spoke up. They went to Congress, they had a hearing, and unfortunately, the sad story is that they were outcast by the company, because they basically threw the company under the bus, saying, hey, they made a mistake, they didn't listen to us, we knew this was going to happen, and still they launched, they recommended the launch. And within their own company, which basically employed everybody in town, they were outcast, they were pushed away.
Eric, you play Adam, the engineer who actually tried to stop the launch. And Nathan has said watching you take on the role was scary at times. What do you think he meant by that?
Scary. Well, this is an intense film. It's very intense. And in order to relay the emotion that the people were going through, we're dealing with life and death on a world stage. And the thing that we knew that was going to happen, these engineers thought that was a possibility. So we needed to really be able to portray the emotion and everything that was going on, the intensity, everything that was going on, to try to make this stop.
Nathan, the thing that's amazing when you watch this, even looking back on it now, you were like, wow, I forgot this. No one was ever prosecuted. You researched thousands of government documents in the process of this. What did you find that surprised you?
I was surprised by the Rogers Commission. You know, President Reagan put together this commission to investigate the disaster of the Space Shuttle Challenger. And during that commission, the engineers, that's where they came forward at the time. And that was very heroic of them to do that. And that's what our goal is with this film, is to portray these heroic men that we look up to, these engineers. And that's our goal with the film.
Why did you choose not to use the names of the crew members?
You know, we have we feel like we have a duty to the truth as filmmakers. And in film, you have to change things a little bit. You have to take a little bit of license. And so we felt what little bit of license we took, it was fair to the people involved on the right side of history and the wrong side of history to change the names a little bit. But whenever it came down to what matters, the facts of the occurrence and what happened that day, we took things right out of the Rogers Commission, their own words from the hearing, and so we very much so tried to get those details right.
The name that we all remember, school teacher Krista McAuliffe, was on board the flight. NASA was trying to get support for the space program. They put a school teacher on the flight. Eric, how much do you think that had to do with the decision to go ahead?
You know, I think it had a lot to do with the decision to go ahead. This was really the first reality television. There was 50,000 some odd people had submitted to be the civilian to go into space. So there were so many people that felt
that's right.
That could have been me. And so everybody is seeing the every person, the every woman, the every man, the person that could have been them climb on board that spacecraft. And so it had worldwide attention. And so with all that attention, it was a pressure cooker. They had to get this thing into space.
It's great that you described it as the first reality TV. I never really thought about it that way. So the film was shot in Texas. Why Texas, Jose?
I mean, we're Texas filmmakers, and why not Texas? We have such an amazing pool of talent. We've had this guy carrying our film. We shot all around Texas. We shot a lot of it in San Antonio, but we also shot in Houston and some in Dallas. An amazing crew out of HBU from Houston. There's so much talent and so many different locations that you can choose from in the state. There's no reason to go anywhere else.
So, Nathan, I'm curious. The last scenes are the Rogers Commission in Washington, and someone, I'm not sure who, says, just continue to tell the truth. She's talking to the engineers, and yet no one is ever prosecuted. Are you making a statement? What are you making a statement about at that point?
You know, I think most of us in our life aren't confronted with do the right thing or do the wrong thing. Most of us are confronted with do the right thing or do nothing. And so that apathy is something that we wanted to comment on and talk about the people who, again, they could have said nothing. These engineers could have done, hey,
Protected
I'm done,
themselves.
I'm going to go home for the night, you know. But they decided to, at cost to themselves and their futures and their families and their livelihoods, they stood up for what was right.
That's a great message to leave the audience with. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. It was really interesting watching it. The Challenger disaster opens tomorrow. Go to thechallengerdisaster.com for more information about the movie.